All right, the next item, moving on, the next item is a discussion on Senate Bill 593, which the reason that I put this on the agenda for tonight is there is a motion or some sort of hearing in the New Hampshire Senate on January 7th, I believe, about this bill. And the bill has some very important implications for Bethlehem. One of the things that it does is it takes away local land use control for landfill expansions. And so if this bill passes, municipalities would no longer have the authority to deny, restrict, or condition landfill expansions through a number of things, but one of them being local agreements or settlement terms, which is what we have as a town with NCES. So what happens if this bill passes is that the New Hampshire DES has the approval alone that controls whether a landfill expansion proceeds. And taking away the local control from us as a town is a big concern of mine, and I think most of the select board members, if not all. It also has a section that has an impact on existing host community agreements and settlements, which is what we have. It references municipal agreements that mean existing host community agreements, consent decrees, or settlement agreements that restrict landfill expansion may become partially unenforceable. So I put this on the agenda because, and we have written a letter to Senator Rochefort in Littleton, and I think we also sent that to Governor Ayotte, and maybe one other person on their committee, if I remember right. Yeah. But and today we left a message for Senator Rochefort to find out if it was appropriate or possible for town representation to be at that January 7th meeting. So rather than just send another letter, maybe we should be there and speak to them that are making these decisions. And I'm sorry? You want to comment? Sure.
Yeah, I'd like to comment. Pat Dowdy. So I looked into 593 just a little bit ago.
Okay.
I wasn't going to come down here, but I saw it was on the agenda, so I figured I'd look at it and then come down. So the way I understand 593 is it's going to get introduced to the Senate on January 7th, and then it's going to be
the Senate vote.
Right. It's going to get it's a brand new bill. Yeah. Brand new. So it's going to get introduced to the Senate, and it's going to get assigned a committee, which is going to go to Energy and something else committee.
It's coming out of it.
No. So okay. There's two different bills. 593 is brand new. There's a 707. That's a House Bill 707. That was rewritten in over the summer. It was rewritten, and that's going to get voted on January 7th by the full Senate. And if that gets approved, that will go to the House. But 593 is a brand new bill. It still has to go through all the committees and then cross over, and it's open to any kind of amendment or whatever. It's brand new. But the way I read 593 is basically, if you go down through, it's not that long. It did say something about any current community host agreements, or how do you pronounce that? Any new ones would have to continue, and they're going to expand or raise the amount per ton to 250.
That was the part on
that's on 593.
Compensation changes.
Right.
From the host community.
Right. So the host community agreement would stay the same for services, and they would raise it from whatever it is currently to 250 per ton. So I would just like to say that looking at the bigger picture, I understand local control and the fact that New Hampshire is going through a lot of things with local control, with the House and the Senate taking over parts of local control. And I'm not necessarily against what they've been doing so far, but I do kind of agree that local control is important. But in some instances, local control doesn't necessarily agree with everybody that's in town. If local control is only for the people that actually come out and use that local control. There's a lot of people that are apathetic, that don't vote, a lot of people that don't get involved at all. So the local control doesn't really include them, and it's their own fault. But what I'm trying to say is the landfill is a lot bigger picture, because the state needs storage. You've all heard that on the news. The state needs the storage. The Bethlehem site is perfect for what the state needs, because it's right next to a national forest. You can't get any better place than where it is. And as far as I'm concerned, Dalton will probably never be acceptable in the state's eyes, because why would you want to have one landfill next to another landfill where you can see each other? To me, it doesn't make any sense. So in saying all this, I think that what the Senate is trying to do is give Bethlehem what they currently have, plus a little bit more, and still be able to do what the state needs. So I think you're going to see more and more of these bills coming through both chambers, and it's going to happen because the state needs the storage, and if the town doesn't want to make any kind of new agreements, then the state's going to step in and say, look, Bethlehem or whoever, it doesn't matter anymore. We need this location, and if you're not willing to do whatever, then we're going to step in and do what we need to do. And so I just think that we need to be aware of that implication, and that perhaps letting the Congress in New Hampshire do what it's going to do, as long as we don't get less. Because I'm looking at taxes, and not to downplay all the work that the Transportation Committee has done, because you guys have done a lot of work, but my taxes are going to go up if that actually comes into fruition, because I'm not going to have a transfer station that doesn't cost me anything. And I'm not going to have the curbside pickup that's really pretty handy. So my taxes are going up if that all comes around. But if we continue with what we have, then maybe my taxes won't go up. So I just want you all to be aware of those implications. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Pat. And I believe you speak for a group of people, no question. I mean, you're not on your own on that. Is there any other comments on this?
Well, I must say that I'm very concerned about the way it's just overriding everything that the town has voted on and voted against for expansion, and that they're just not even willing to discuss it. They're just the SB593, which substantially undermined the key provisions of the town's 2011 settlement agreement with North Country Environmental Services, particularly those provisions limiting the landfill expansion, footprint, capacity, height, and permitting. While the agreement would not be void in its entirety, its most protective land use provisions would likely become unenforceable. So we have no say at all what goes on after this, if this gets passed. And I particularly don't like, and it's not only for Bethlehem, but for the entire state. So they'll take any existing landfill and allow them to expand, even though the residents have explicitly voted it down numerous times. So that's my concern.
Let's get Richard up and then Mr. Jensen. Not that Richard. Yeah.
The other Richard. So there's a couple things in this bill. One is the local control issue. And so they are taking away a town's right to say, no, thank you. They are also taking away the town's ability to negotiate. And so now they're going to set the rates, not down here in Concord. So those are huge losses. And that becomes a template for every other thing that nobody wants in their community to get steamrolled through. So if this one goes through, I guarantee you there'll be another one on data centers. There'll be another one on power generation. And this is just how we're going to do what we need to do. And once you take local control out of the town and send it to Concord, it is gone forever. And it becomes the purview of whoever has the most money to drive policy. And that ain't us. The financial implications of what's happening currently in the transfer station is a separate issue. Taxes may go up, taxes may not go up. Everybody's very focused on the money that goes out in their property taxes. I'm not hearing as many people say, what happens if the river gets fouled, or there's contamination, or we find out that there's something being dumped in there that isn't compatible with the linings that were put in there 20 years ago or however long ago they were installed. That's going to hit your property values. And if you don't believe me, read up on East Palestine, Ohio, where they had the train wreck, and those people's home values are now severely impaired, to be nice. But they were offered a settlement by the railroad where they would be made whole financially, but they could never sue again. So if they get sick 20 years from now from something that was dumped in East Palestine, too bad, you signed a release, you're out. So there's long-term, and then there's the short-term tax implication. But when your property values start going down and your home equity evaporates, and you can't borrow against your house because it isn't worth as much, or you can't sell your house, or you can't transfer your house to your kids, that's going to be a bigger problem. And then it's too late. So I would encourage everybody to think very carefully about, the idea of giving the state purview to do whatever they need to do to accomplish the needs of the state. It's a very slippery slope, and I think anybody that's comfortable with that isn't thinking far enough ahead. So thank you.
But what's interesting is it's not just the state's trash. It's trash coming from other states, Massachusetts, Connecticut, being trucked up here. That's why we don't have the capacity.
There is that, and they actually kind of worded that funny because they make it sound like New Hampshire has this problem. It's not New Hampshire. It's exactly what you said. The state does not have the ability to limit interstate commerce, so we're stuck
They're not limiting the company doing business, but they are putting demands on the towns to take this trash so the companies can make money.
Yeah, it's so free trash pickup is great. Being able to drop your mattresses off, I've heard that a few times. That's all nice, but the long-term impacts and what it's going to cost you financially in the long run, you want to get a pencil and a calculator out and start thinking through that very carefully. And this is not a zero risk proposition by any means.
Chris Jensen, Lewis Hill Road. I'm so relieved to be disagreeing with Patrick again. Aside from that, another part of that bill that is kind of scary is that it argues that existing landfills are the most logical location rather than opening new landfills, and therefore, if more capacity is needed, the focus should be on existing landfills and not new sites. And that pretty much telegraphs where they want to go with that one.
Yeah. I mean, the way the bill is written, at least to me, almost makes it sound like it's specifically for us, for our situation here. There is no other place in the state that I'm aware of that has an existing landfill that is scheduled to close and that wants to expand, except here.